Hey guys, welcome to day second uh, challenge of reading. Like sometimes it's very difficult to speak in English, But as this channel is completely for growing oneself and like showing all the like genuine self in the sense whatever I am, and however I'm going to improve. That I have to say. Like right now, I was not able to say like welcome to challenge day second or welcome to second day challenge of reading. Like I have taken everyday reading challenge for at least 91 days, and that I'm going to complete. Like as I've been already reading for 24 days, so I just extended these to 91 days. Like since yesterday I started it counting that I'm going to read for every day, like on YouTube, having on like YouTube stream, and there I'm going to read in front of you guys. And might be I'll explain if I found someone who is wanted to say or wanted to listen its explanation. Then while reading I'll also try to explain. I'm not like good at explaining the things, but we'll try to figure out and how to explain but my perspective. Like I'm not like teacher or something like that, but whatever I understand I'll try to explain that. Besides that, today it's second day of reading challenge, and I'm going to start with reading like Mindsight. As you can see the book name Mindsight, I have decided to read this book with you completely on YouTube stream only. I'm not going to read this book except like on live stream, except that I'm not gonna read, like except that if I want to read another book I can read. Like I'm having some what I can say collection of books. Like if I go here and show you, there are lots of books that I'm currently reading. Not lots of books, like the another book is blank. If you want me to read this book with you as well, I will start this book as well after completing Mindsight. But for now, I decided to read Mindsight so that I can like explain related to this Mindsight as well as like read with you guys. But besides that, what I'm trying to say here, like I like to read books and just like to read books. So I just decided that let's take this on YouTube. As I stated, told you, I'm repeating this thing. But yeah, it's like very amazing, like having challenges every day. You can also take, you can also feel it. If you completed one day for its challenge, then you'll feel that, oh man, I did. But you need to have some kind of cue, not a cue exactly, some kind of reward system that that will make you keep reading book every day. So for me, what is my reward here? Let me show you. Here you can see, like I'll be able to see the streaks for every day. Like it's my 25th streak today, so it just make me feel good whenever I see that I have completed 24 days of reading. Then it makes me feel good. The same way you can have your streaks as well. You can track on, if you have iPhone, then you can track on your iPhone for reading. But let's say if you want to continue doing some other challenges that you can also track, let me show you one another software or a web application or Android application or iPhone application, OS application. So it's like if I go on goals, it's a toggle track. It's very good. Like you can see here, I'm having two goals right now. Salesforce development, as I am a Salesforce developer, so I have to work every day. So this is my goal that I have added it. Besides that, YouTube stream also one of my goal that I have started streaming and started tracking it. Then like I have already completed streak 1, like day streak 1, and when you see on your streaks you feel good. Like personally I feel good that I have completed. You can also try here on toggle track, and you will be able to see yourself that if you are able to feel it or not. Let me know in the comments what do you feel about it. If you are able to complete your like streaks, goals, everyday challenge, that will make you feel good or not, let me know about it. But for me, it makes me feel very good when I see that I have completed my streak. Like I've been reading the book challenge for 24 days, and today when I see 24 day, it makes me feel very good, and it make me motivate that I should start again anything, like as I started YouTube streaming. So it is just very like self what self-rewarding system. Like I didn't develop, actually I was reading one of book, the name was The Power of Habit and Atomic Habit. From that, as you can see here, I have already completed that Atomic Habit and The Power of Habit, which made me think like this. So this is how I started doing challenges. You can also accept it, or you can also have your own challenges and complete it, as well as you can like take the challenge with me since today as well. If you are watching it today, you can start having challenge, reading challenge from today itself. Like for me it was 91 days, but for you it will be like 90 days. No need to be overwhelmed by yourself by taking so much, like 91 or 100 or something like that, but you can start by shortly, because once you completed that short period of time or short challenge, then that will make you feel self completeness, not completeness. There is one word that I'm not remembering right now, but yeah, as of now, like I started explaining the thing, but eventually I do know about myself that eventually I'm gonna get the things that I wanted to say. I will not be hesitating anymore after a certain period of time. Might be after 91 days I'll be very fluent, very confident, very having very good way of explanation. So I do know about this, that is why I'm continuing this. So that is the like kind of introduction for this video or for this live streaming. Let's start our reading book. I'm getting spam call that I'm going to cut. I'll do something related to callings and all those, because while streaming I might get some calls, so I don't want to distract myself as well as you, that if I'm something getting or not. So let's start our today's challenge. Let me take this out of from here. Sometimes it's very difficult for me. I'm having cold and cough. Because of that, like sometimes it's very difficult for me to breathe as well as like talk very continuously, but I'll improve each and everything that you are going to see. I'll like update you for each and everything. So let's start reading Mindsight, the new science of personal transformation, Daniel J. Siegel, MD. Sometimes I'm not able to pronounce the things, so for that I'll just right click on the things and it will show me its pronunciation as well as its meaning. So I'll start reading this book from introduction. So this is forward. Like what I was trying to say, that let's say if I'm not able to pronounce it, then how I'm going to see its pronunciation. I'll right click on this, I'll select the language, in which language I need to have pronunciation of it. Then I'll select US because I want to learn US accents. And so just because of that, I will see forward in US accent, and it will forward. 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 I will repeat it in this live streaming itself, because I really want to have this listened again and again. That is why I'm trying it. Forward. 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 Okay, that's good. Sorry for my cough and cold. Just bear with me for 2 hours. It's just reading challenge. You can read also. Sorry for it. Inconvenience. So let's start by reading introduction. What introduction says to us. Here is the introduction. Introduction, the diving into the sea inside. Okay, within batch of us there is an internal mental world, what I have come to think of as the sea inside. That is a wonderfully rich place, filled with thoughts and feelings, memories and dreams, hopes and wishes. Of course, it can also be a turbulent place where we experience the dark side of all those wonderful feelings and thoughts. Fears, sorrows, dreads, regrets, nightmares. When this inner sea seems to crash in on us, threatening to drag us down below to the dark depths, it can make us feel. It can make us feel as we have are drowning. Who among us has not at one time? Sorry for it. Depths. It can make us feel as if we are drowning. Who among us has not at one time or another felt overwhelmed by a sensation from within our own mindsights. Sometimes these feelings are just a passing thing. Now let me see my YouTube streaming if it's running or not. Yeah, it's actually streaming and it's been 10 minutes, no one seeing it. Just wanted to like confirm if is there anyone so that I can reply to them if they are watching or they are still reading with me. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I'll start it reading again. So where I was, minds sometimes these feelings are just a passing thing. A bad day at work, a fight with someone we love, an attack of nervous about a test we have to take or a presentation we have to give, or just an inexplicable case of the blues, for days or two. But sometimes they seem to be something much more interactable, so much part of the very essence of who we are, that it may not even occur to us that we can change them. This is where the skill that I have called mindsight comes in. For mindsight, once mastered, is a truly transformational tool. Mindsight has the potential to free us from patterns of mind that are getting in the way of living our lives to the fullest. Now, what is mindsight? Mindsight is a kind of focused attention that allows us to see the internal workings of our minds. It helps of our own minds. It helps us to be aware of our mental process without being swept away by them. Enables us to get ourselves off the autopilot of ingrained behaviors and habitual responses and moves us beyond the reactive emotional loops we all have a tendency to get trapped in. It lets us name and tame the emotions we are experiencing rather than being overwhelmed by them. Consider the difference between saying I am sad and I feel sad. Similar as those two statements may seem, there is actually a profound difference between them. I am sad is a kind of self definition and a very limiting one. I feel sad suggests the ability to recognize and acknowledge a feeling without being consumed by it. The focusing skill that are part of mindsight make it possible to see what is inside, to accept it, and in the accepting to let it go, and finally to transform it. You can also think of mindsight as a very special lens that gives us the capacity to perceive the mind with greater clarity than ever before. This lens is something that virtually everyone can develop, and once we have it, we can dive deeply into the mental sea inside, exploring our own inner lives and those of others. A uniquely a human ability. Mindsight allows us to examine closely, in depth, the process by which we think, feel, and behave, and it allows us to reshape and redirect our inner experience so that we have more freedom of choice in our everyday actions, more power to create and future, to become the author of our own story. Another way to put it is that mindset is the basic skill that underlies everything we mean when we speak of having social and emotional intelligence. Interestingly enough, we now know from the finding of neuroscience that the mental and emotional changes we can create through cultivation of the skills of mindset are transformational. Now, at the very physical level of the brain, by developing the ability to focus our attention on our internal world. Now, we are picking up a scalpel. Now, we can use the resculpt our neural pathways, stimulating the growth of areas of the brain that are crucial to mental health. I will talk a lot about these in the chapters that follow because I believe that a basic understanding of how the brain works helps people see how much potential there is for change. Mm, But change never just happens. It's something we have to work at. The ability to navigate the inner sea of our minds, to have mindset, is our birthright, and some of us, for reason that will become clear later, have a lot more of it than others. It does not come automatically any more than being born with muscles makes us athletes. The scientific reality is that Now, we need certain experiences to develop this essential human capacity. I like to say that parents and other caregiver offers us our first swimming lessons in that inner sea. And if we have seen fortunate enough to have nurturing relationship early in life, we have developed the basic of mindset of on which we can build. But just give me a minute. Babu. Oh man, like there are some childrens that want to interrupt, so I'm just telling them, just I'm busy, just go and mind your own business. It's not like actually mind your own business, but I'm just trying to make them understand that I'm doing something. So just please don't come here. So anyway, where I was, I forgot again. Yes, develops human capacity. I like to say that parents and other caregivers offer us our first swimming lessons in that inner sea. Yeah, and if we have been fortunate enough to have nurturing relationships early in life, we have developed the basics of mindset on which we can build. But even if such early supports was lacking, there are specific activities and experiences that can nurture and mindset throughout the lifespan. As you will see, mindset is a form of expertise that can be honed in each of us. Now, whatever our early history. When I first began to explore the nature of the mind professionally, there was no term in our everyday language that captured the way we pursue our thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, beliefs, attitudes, hopes, dreams, and fantasies. Now, of course, these activities of the mind fill our day-to-day lives. We don't need to learn a skill in order to experience them, but how do we actually develop the ability to pursue a thought, not just have one, and to know it as an activity of our minds, so that we are not taken over by it? How can we be receptive to mind's reaches and not just reactive to reflexes? Now, how can we direct our thoughts and feelings rather than and be driven by them? And how can we know the minds of others, so that we truly understand where they are coming from and can respond more effectively, compassionately? When I was a young psychiatrist, there weren't many readily accessible scientific or even clinical terms to describe the whole of this ability to be able to help my patients. I coined the term mindsight so that together we could discuss this important ability that allows us to see and shape the inner workings of our own minds. Our first five senses allow us to perceive the outside world, to hear a bird's song or a snake's warning, a rattle to make snake's warning rattle to make our way down a busy street, or smell the warming earth of spring. What has been called our sixth sense allows us to perceive our internal bodily states, the quickly beating heart that signals fear or excitement, the sensation of butterflies in our stomach, the pain that demands our attention. Mindsight, our ability to look within and perceive the mind, to reflect on experience, is very bit as essential to our well-being. Mindsight is our seventh sense. Like I'm getting my throat is getting dried up. I don't know why. Might be it's just because of some kind of hesitation I'm having. Like I feel it. Personally, I'm like I have so much confidence, but like as I read yesterday related to book, the brain, whatever we have in our brain, like neural system, neurons, some of the neurons that gets wired in the sense, if you practice something regularly, repeatedly, then for that particular practice, there is neuron that gets like kind of neuron you are going to have for that particular practice or repetition. And if you get q in the sense, if that neuron get triggered, then eventually we feel like that, we behave like that. It's like a brain neuron that made us to do the things the same way. Earlier I was having so much hesitation while speaking in front of people, so might be just because of that it get triggered. And right now I'm feeling very hesitant. I personally feel it like I'm very confident here, but in my brain somewhere it is making me feel unconscious, not unconscious, hesitated. So it is just a part of our brain, so I will let it do his work, but I'll also do consciously my work, reading in front of you, saying you. So this is how it works, because yesterday I read the book and I get to know about it, and I felt it. Yeah, it's really like that, because I'm feeling very much confidence speaking in front of you, but in my mind there are some neurons that is making me feel hesitant, because earlier whenever I was able to speak in front of people or in front of YouTube or in front of camera, at the time I was feeling very hesitant and nervous. So it is just triggering that same neuron, but if I practice this for a few days, those neurons will be overridden by some other neurons. I can't say neurons, but the activities that we have in our brain stored in our neurons. Exactly, like whenever we do something, then in our brain some neurons develops for that particular task or activities. So it is just like that. Why I explain this? Because I'm feeling some hesitation, not hesitation, like my throat is getting dried up, and just because of it, I guess. Why I'm telling this? Because when I read book alone, at the time I don't feel any throat dryness or something like that, but right now I'm feeling it. So I guess it is just because of that. So that's all for this, but let me start reading again. I would have a water bottle because it's very drying up. Give me a minute. I'll take my water bottle. I'll take this and will drink water so that I continue. Sorry for disturbance. As I hope, let me start. As I hope to show you in this book, this essential skill can help us build social and emotional brain power, move our lives from disorder to well-being, and create satisfying relationship filled with connections and compassion. Business and government leaders have told me that understanding how the mind functions in a groups has helped them be more effective and enabled their organizations to become more productive. Clinicians in medicine and mental health have said that Mindsight has changed the way they approach their patients, and that putting the mind at the heart of their healing work has helped them create novel and useful intervention. Teachers introduced to Mindsight have learned to teach with the brain in mind, and are reaching and teaching teach with the brain in mind, and are reaching and teaching their students in deeper and more lasting ways. In our individualized mindset offers us the opportunity to explore the subjective essence of who we are, to create a life of deeper meaning with a richer and a more understandable internal world. With mindset, we are better able to balance our emotions, achieving an internal equilibrium that enables us to cope with the small and large stress of our lives. Through our ability to focus attention, mindset also helps the body and brain achieve homeostasis. Homeostasis. Let's say its meaning. Homeostasis. What does this mean? Because I don't know. That is, I need to check. The tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, and especially as maintained by physiological process. Equilibrium means maintaining the things from both sides. That I do know about it. Equilibrium. Homeostasis. So homeostasis means keeping both. Like I didn't get exactly what does it mean, right? The tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by physiologists. Homeostasis objective. I still didn't get. I need to check it more. I'll try to understand it, but let me read it continually. The internal balance, coordination, and adaptiveness that forms the core of health. The internal balance, coordination, and adaptiveness that forms the core of health. Now, finally, Mindsight can improve our relationships with our friends, colleagues, spouses, and children, and even the relationship we have with our own selves. Everything that follows rests on three fundamental principles. Now, the first is that Mindsight can be cultivated through very practical steps. This means that creating well-being in our mental life, in our close relationships, and even in our bodies is a learnable skill. Each chapter of this book explores these skills from basic to advanced, from navigating the sea inside. Second, as mentioned above, when we develop the skill of mindsight, we actually change the physical structure of the brain, developing the lens that enables us to see the mind more clearly, stimulates the brain to grow important new connections. This revelation is based on one of the most exciting scientific discoveries of the last 20 years. Now, how we focus our attention shapes the structure of the brain. Neuroscience supports the idea that developing the reflective skills of mindsight activates the very circuits that create a resilience and well-being and that underlie empathy and compassion as well. Neuroscience has also definitively, let's check its pronunciation.
Definitively.
Definitively. Definitively shown that we can grow these new connections throughout our lives, not just in childhood. The short minding the brain sections interspersed beach b
Interspersed.
interspersed interspersed through our part first are a traveler's guide to this new territory. The third principle is at the heart of my work as psychotherapist, educator, and scientist. Well-being emerges when we create connections in our lives, when we learn to use mindsight to help the brain achieve and maintain integration, a process by which separate elements are linked together into a working whole. I know this may sound both unfamiliar and abstract at first, but I hope you will soon find that it is a natural and useful way of thinking about our lives. For example, integration is at the heart of how we connect to one another in healthy ways, honoring one another difference while keeping our lines of communication wide open, linking separate entities to one another. Integration is also important for releasing the creativity that emerges when the left and right sides of the brain are functioning together. Integration enables us to be flexible and free. The lack of such connections promotes a life that is either rigid or chaotic, stuck and dull. On the one hand, or explosive, unpredictable on the other. With the connecting freedom of integration comes a sense of vitality and the ease of well-being. Without integration, we can become imprisoned in behavioral ruts, anxiety, and depression. Great obsession and addiction. By acquiring mindsight skill, now we can alter the way the mind functions and move our lives toward integration, away from this extreme of chaos or rigidity. With mindsight, we are able to focus our mind in ways that literally integrate the brain and move it toward resilience and health. It's wonderful to receive an email from an audience member or patient who says, "My whole view of reality has changed," but not everyone new to mindsight gets it right away. Some people are concerned that it's just another way to become more observed, a form of navel gazing, of becoming preoccupied with reflection instead of living fully. Perhaps you have also read some of the recent research or the ancient wisdom that tells us that happiness depends on getting out of yourselves. Does mindset turn us away from this greater good? Now, while it is true that being self-obsessed decreases happiness, Mindset actually frees you to become less self-absorbed, not more. When we are not taken over by our thoughts and feelings, we can become clearer in our own internal as world as well as more receptive to the world inner world of another. Scientific studies support this idea, revealing that individuals with more mindset skill shows more interest and empathy toward others. The research has also clearly shown that mindset supports not only internal and interpersonal well-being but also greater effectiveness and achievement in school and work. Another quite poignant concern about mindset came up one day when I was talking with a group of teachers. Now, how can you ask us to have children reflect on their own mindset? One teacher said to me, "Isn't that opening a paradox box?" I recall that when Pandora's box. Oh, sorry, I read paradox. Isn't that opening a Pandora's box? Recall that when a Pandora's box was opened, all the troubles of humanity flew out. Is this how we imagine our inner lives or inner lives of our children? In my own experience, a great transformation begins when we look at our minds with curiosity and respect rather than fear and avoidance. Inviting our thoughts and feelings into awareness allows us to learn from them rather than be driven by them. We can calm them without ignoring them. We can hear their wisdom without being terrified by their screaming voices. And as you will see in some of the stories in this book, even surprisingly, young children can develop the ability to pause and make choices about how to act when they are more aware of their impulses. That's true actually. I'll still I'll continue reading. I'll not explain whatever I understand about it, but do let me know about if you want to have explanation of it as well. So I'll start explaining the things, but in a good way. I'll try to figure out how can I explain you so that you can also get to know the things. How do we cultivate mindset? Mindset is not we have been reading mindset. Let's just take what does it mean, mindset. Understanding of situation or even only after it has happened or developed. Mindset in the sense to understand the thing, whatever happened, now why does it happen, and to try to understand that, to find out uh, why behind it. Mindset is not an all or nothing ability. It's something you either have or don't have. As a form of expertise, the mindset can be developed when we put it in effort, time and practice. Most people come into the world with the brain potential to develop mindset, but the neural circuits that underlie it need experiences to develop properly. For some, such as those with autism and related neurological conditions, the neural circuits of mindsight may not develop well even with the best caregiving. In most children, however, the ability to see the mind develops through everyday interaction with others, especially through attentive communication with parents and caregivers. Now, when adults are in tune with a child, when they reflect back to the child an accurate picture of his internal world, he comes to sense his own mind with clarity. This is the foundation of mindsight. Neuroscientists are now identifying the circuit of the brain that participate in this intimate dance and exploring how caregivers attunement to the child's internal world stimulates the development of those neural circuits. If parents are unresponsive, distant, or confusing in their response, however, their lack of attunement means that they cannot reflect back to the child an accurate picture of the child's inner world. In this case, research suggests the child's mindset lens may become cloudy or distorted. The child may then be able to see only part of the sea inside or see it dimly, or the child may develop a lens that sees well but is fragile, easily disrupted by stress and intense emotions. The good news is that whatever our early history, it is never too late to stimulate the growth of the neural fibers that enables mindsight to flourish. You'll soon meet a 92-year-old man who was able to overcome a painful and twisted childhood to emerge a Mindsight maven. Here we see living evidence for another exciting discovery of modern neuroscience, that the brain never stops growing in response to experience, and this is true for people with happy childhoods too. Even if we had positive relationship with our caregivers and parents early on, and even if we write books on the subject, we can continue as long as we live to keep developing our vital seventh sense and promoting the connections and integration that are at the heart of well-being. We'll begin our journey in part first by exploring situations in which the vital skills of mindset are absent. These stories reveal how seeing the mind clearly and being able to alter how it functions are essential element in the path toward well-being. Part first is more theoretical section of the book. There, where I explain the basic concepts, give readers an introduction to brain science and offer working definitions of the mind and mental health. Since I know that my readers will come from a wide variety of backgrounds and interests, I realize that some of you may want to skim or even skip much of that material in order to move directly to part 2. In part 2, we'll dive deeply into stories from my patient practice that illustrates the steps involved in developing the skill of mindsight. Now, this is the section of the book in which I have shared the knowledge and practical skills that I will help people understand how to shape their own minds toward health. At the very end of the book is an appendix outlining the fundamental concepts and a set of endnotes with scientific resources supporting these ideas. Now, our exploration of mindset begins with the story of a family that changed my own life and my entire approach to psychotherapy. Looking for ways to help them inspired me to search for new answers to some painful questions about what happens when mindset is lost. It also led to me to my search for the techniques that can enable us to reclaim and recreate mindset in ourselves, our children, and our communities. I hope you'll join me on this journey into inner sea. Within those depths awaits a vast world of possibility. Part first. Let's start first. And let me tell you one more thing that as I have like taken challenge of 2 hours every day, I have like started this challenge like since let me see how much time it is, like 44 minutes ago. So I'll stop this reading at 12 o'clock because I have some other work that I need to complete, related to my personal works, professional work, so that I have to complete. So I'll stop this streaming at 12 o'clock just to let you know that. Because why I'm telling this, because as I already told that I will read 2 hours, but I started doing this live streaming at 10 o'clock, so I have to stop it 12 o'clock because it's like 2 hour, and that another thing that is I have to do some other work as well. But from tomorrow I'll make sure that I will have this streaming for 2 hours exactly. I'll try to do it as much as possible. I'm not saying that I'm gonna like make it happen, but I'll try it. And if I'm gonna try it, then yeah, definitely I'm gonna do it. So yeah, let's do that. The path to well-being mindset eliminate. I'm feeling very relaxed when I stop reading. First, broken brain, a lost soul, the triangle of well-being. Barbara's family might never have come for therapy if 7-year-old Leanne hadn't stopped talking in school. Leanne was Barbara's middle child, between Amy, who was 14, and Tommy, who was 3. They had all taken it hard when their mother was in a near fatal car accident, but it wasn't until Barbara returned home from the hospital and rehabilitation center that Leanne became. Let's check its pronunciation if I'm reading it right or not.
Leanne.
Leanne, okay. Leanne.
Leanne.
That Leanne became selectively mute. Now she refused to speak with anyone outside the family, including me. In our first weekly therapy session, we spent our time in silence, playing some games, doing pantomimes. I'll check this as well. Sorry to interrupt. Between not a Brazil, it's a big US.
Pantomimes.
Pantomimes. Doing pantomimes with puppets, drawing and just being together. Leanne wore her dark hair in a single jumbled ponytail, and her sad brown eyes would quickly dart away whenever I looked directly at her. Our session felt struck. Her sadness unchanging. The games we played repetitive. But then one day, when we were playing catch, the ball rolled to the side of the couch, and Leanne discovered my video player and screen. She said nothing, but the sudden alterns, alter, alertness of her expression told me her mind had clicked onto something. The following week, Leanne brought in a videotape, walked over to the video machine and put it into the slot. I turned on the player and her smile lit up the room as we watched her mother gently lift younger Leanne up into the air again and again, then pull her into a huge enfolding hug. The two of them shaking with laughter from head to toe. Leanne's father Ben had captured on film the dance of communication between parent and child that is the hallmark of love. We connect with each other through a give and take of signals that link us from the inside out. This is the joy filled way in which we come to share each other's minds. Next, the pair swirled around on the lawn, kicking brilliant yellow and burnt orange leaves of autumn. The mother-daughter duet approached the camera, pursed lips, blowing kisses into the lens, and then burst out in laughter. A 5-year-old Leanne, I forgot again.
Leanne.
Leanne. Leanne shouted, "Happy birthday, Daddy!" at the top of her lungs, and you could see the camera shake as her father laughed, along with the ladies in his life. In the background, Leanne's baby brother, Tommy, was napping in his stroller, snuggled under a blanket and surrounded by plush toys. Leanne's older sister, Amy, was off to the side, engrossed in a book. That's how my mom used to be when we lived in Boston, Leanne said suddenly, the smile dropping from her face. It was the first time she had spoken directly to me, but it felt more like I was overhearing her talk to herself. While had Leanne stopped talking? It had been 2 years since that birthday celebration, 18 months since the family moved to Los Angeles, and 12 months since Barbara suffered a severe brain injury in her accident, a head-on collision. Barbara had not been wearing her seat belt that evening as she drove their old Mustang to the local store to get some milk for the kids. When the drunk driver plowed into her, her forehead was forced into the steering wheel. She had been in a coma for weeks following the accident. After she came out of the coma, Barbara had changed in dramatic ways. On the videotape, I saw the warm, connected, and caring person that Barbara had been. But now Ben told me she was just not the same Barbara anymore. Her physical body had come home, but Barbara herself, as they had known her, was gone. During Leanne's next visit, I asked for some time alone with her parents. It was clear that that what had been a close relationship between Barbara and Ben was now profoundly stressed and distant. Ben was patient and kind with Barbara and seemed to care for her deeply, but I could sense his despair. Barbara just stared off as we talked, made a little eye contact with either of us, and seemed to lack interest in the conversation. The damage of her forehead had been repaired by plastic surgery, and although she had been left with motor skills that were somehow slow and clumsy, and she actually looked quite similar in outward appearance to her image on the videotape. Yet something huge had changed inside. Wondering how she experienced her new way of being, I asked Barbara what she thought the difference was. I will never forget her reply. Well, I guess if you had to put it into words, I suppose I would say that I have lost my soul. Ben and I sat there, stunned. After a while, I gathered myself enough to ask Barbara what losing her soul felt like. I don't know if I can say any more than that. She said flatly. It feels fine, I guess. No different. I mean, just the way things are. Just empty. Things are fine. We moved on to practical issues about care for the children, and the session ended. It wasn't clear at how much Barbara could or would recover. Given that only a year had passed since the accident, much neural repair was still possible. After an injury, the brain can regain some of its function and even grow new neurons and create a neural connections. But with extensive damage, it may be difficult to retrieve the complex abilities and personalities traits that were dependent on the now destroyed neural structure. Neuroplasticity is the term used to describe this capacity for creating neural connections and growing new neurons in response to experience. Neuroplasticity is not just available to us in youth, we now know that it can occur throughout the lifespan. Efforts at rehabilitation for Barbara would need to harness the power of neuroplasticity to grow the new connections that might be able to reestablish old mental functions. But we would have we let me check it. We had we'd had have to wait a while for the healing effect of time and rehabilitation to see how much neurological recovery would be possible. My immediate task was to help Leanne and her family understand how someone could be alive and look the same, and how become so radically different in a way her mind functioned. Ben had told me earlier that he did not know how to help the children deal with how Barbara had changed. He said that sorry to interrupt in between. I was checking my notification because I thought there is some important notification that came. So yeah, I just checked for that. But let me read it again. He said that he could barely understand it himself. He was on double duty, working, managing the kids' schedules, and making up for what Barbara could no longer do. This was a mother who had delighted in making homemade Halloween costumes and Valentine's Day cupcakes. Now she spent most of the day watching TV or wandering around the neighborhood. She could walk to the grocery store, but even with a list, she would often come home empty-handed. Amy and Liane didn't mind so much that she cooked a few simple meals over and over again, but they were upset when she forgot their special request things they would told her they liked or needed for school. It was as if nothing they said to her really registered. As our therapy session continued, Barbara usually sat quietly, even when she was alone with me. Although her speech was intact, occasionally she would suddenly become agitated at an innocent comment from Ben, or if Tommy fidgeted, or Leanne twirled her ponytail around her finger. She might even erupt after a silence, as if some internal process was driving her. But most of the time, her expression seemed frozen, more like emptiness than depression, more vacuous than sad. She seemed aloof and unconcerned, and I noticed that she never spontaneously touched either her husband or her children. Once, when 3-year-old Tommy climbed onto her lap, she briefly put her hand on his leg, as if repeating some earlier patterns of behavior. But the warmth had gone out of the gesture. When I saw the children without their mother, they let me know how they felt. She just doesn't care about us like she used to. Leanne said, and she doesn't ever ask us anything about ourselves. Amy added with sadness and irritation. She's just plain selfish. She doesn't want to talk to anyone anymore. Tommy remained silent. He sat close to his father, with a drawn look on his face. The loss of someone we love cannot be adequately expressed with words. Grappling with loss, struggling with disconnections and despair, fills us with a sense of anguish and actual pain. Indeed, the parts of our brain that process physical pain overlaps with the neural centers that record social ruptures and rejection. Loss rips us apart. Grief allows you to let go of something you have lost only when you begin to accept what you now have in its place. As our mind clings to the familiar, into our established expectation, we can become trapped in feelings of disappointment, confusion, and anger that create our own internal worlds of suffering. But what were Ben and the kids actually letting go of? Could Barbara regain her connected way of being? How could the family learn to live with a person whose body was still alive but whose personality and so, at least as they had known her, were gone? You maps and we me maps. Nothing in the formal training, whether in medical school, pediatrics, or psychiatry, had prepared me for the situation I now faced in my treatment room. I had had courses on brain anatomy and on brain and behavior, but when I was seeing Barbara's family in the early 1990s, relatively little was known about how to bring our knowledge of such subjects into the clinical practice of psychotherapy. Looking for some way to explain Barbara to her family, I trekked to the medical library and reviewed the recent clinical and scientific literature that dealt with the region of the brain damaged by her accident. Scans of Barbara's brain revealed substantial trauma to the area just behind her forehead. The lesions followed the upper curve of the steering wheel. This area, I discovered, facilitates very important functions of our personality. It also links widely separated brain regions to one another. It is a profoundly integrative region of the brain. The area behind the forehead is part of the frontal lobe of the cerebral cortex, the outermost section of the brain. The frontal lobe is associated with most of our complex thinking and planning activity. In this part of the brain fires neuron in patterns that enables us to form neural representations, maps of various aspects of our world. The maps resulting from these clusters of neural activity serves to create an image in our minds. For example, when we take in the light reflected from a bird sitting in a tree, our eyes send signals back into our brain, and neurons they fire in certain patterns that permit us to have the visual picture of the bird. As I earlier explained that related to my hesitation and the book that I read yesterday, the story of you. Here also that is the same thing is being explained, that once we see something, then just because of that, there is something in our mind that triggers our neurons, and it makes something to fill us. Like here it is explained that it makes us see a picture. The triggering of neurons makes us see of that birds. That is what here it is being explained. So the same way, I was explaining about my hesitation. So what I'm trying to explain here, that you don't need to like worry about your hesitation or nervousness. If you are feeling it, you have to just feel it consciously, like if it is like rational or irrational. So yeah, I'll get to know most of the things if you bear with me, because I'm reading a book. That's the thing. I'm very having very problem here. Somehow, in ways still to be discovered, the physical property of neurons firing helps to create our subjective experience, the thoughts, feelings, and associations evoked by seeing that bird. For example, the sight of the bird may causes us to feel certain emotions, to hear or remember its song, and even to associate that song with ideas such as nature, hope, freedom, and peace. हाँ आया मैं जा आया he worked by seeing that bird. For example, the sight of the bird may cause us to feel certain emotion, to fear or remember its song, and even to associate that song with idea such as nature, hope, freedom, and peace. The more abstract, symbolic the representation, the higher in the nervous system it is created, and the more forward in the cortex. The prefrontal cortex, the most damaged part of the prefrontal lobe of Barbara's brain, makes complex representation that permit us to create concepts in the present, think of experiences in the past, and plan and make images about the future. The prefrontal cortex is also responsible for the neural representation that enable us to make images of the mind itself. I call this representation of our mental world mind sites map, and I have identified several kinds of mind sites maps made by our brains. The brain makes what I call a me map that gives us insight into ourselves, and a you map for insight into others. We also seem to create we maps representation of our relationships. Without such maps, we are unable to pursue the mind within ourselves or others. Without me map, now for example, we can become swept up in our thoughts or flooded by our feelings. Without you map, we see only others behaviors, the physical aspects of reality, without seeing the objective core, the inner mental see of others. It see the you map that permits us to have empathy. In essence, the injury to Barbara's brain had created a world without mindsight. She had feelings and thoughts, but she could not represent them to self as activities of her mind. Even when she said she would lost her soul, she her statement had a bland, factual quality, more like a scientific observation than a deeply felt expression of personal identity. I was puzzled by that disconnect between observation and emotion until I learned from later studies that the parts of our brain that create the maps of the mind are distinct from those that enable us to observe and comment on self traits such as shyness or anxiety, or in Barbara's case, the lack of quality she called soul. In the years since I took Barbara's brain scans to the library, much more has been discovered about the interlinked functions of the prefrontal cortex. For example, the site of this region is crucial for how we pay attention. It enables us to put things in the front of our mind and hold them in awareness. The middle portion of the prefrontal area The part damaged in Barbara coordinates an astonishing number of essential skills, including regulating the body, attuning to others, balancing emotions, being flexible in our responses, smoothing fear, and creating empathy, insight, moral awareness, and intuition. And these were the skills Barbara was no longer able to recruit in her interaction with her family. I will be referring to and expanding on this list of nine middle prefrontal functions throughout our discussion of mindset. But even at first glance, you can see that these functions are essential ingredient for well-being, ranging from bodily processes such as regulating our hearts to social functions such as empathy and moral reasoning. After Barbara emerged from her coma, her impairments had seemed to settle into a new personality. Some of her habits, such as what she liked to eat and how she brushed her teeth, remained the same. There was nothing significantly changed in how her brain mapped out this basic behavioral. Let's check its pronunciation.
Behavioral.
Behavioral. Behavioral. Behavioral functions. Now, but the ways in which she thought, felt, behaved, and interacted with our others were profoundly altered. These affected every day detail of daily life, right down to Leanne's crooked ponytail. Barbara still had the behavioral moves necessary to fix her daughter's hair, but she no longer cared enough to get it right. Above all, Barbara seemed to have lost the very map making ability that would enable her to honor the reality and importance of her own or others' subjective inner lives. Her mindset maps were no longer forming amid the now jumbled middle prefrontal circuitry upon which they dependent for their creation. This middle prefrontal trauma had also disrupted the communication between Barbara and her family. She could neither send nor receive the connecting signals, enabling her to join minds with the people she had loved most. Ben summed up the change. She is gone. The person we live with is just not Barbara. The videotape of Ben's birthday had revealed a vibrant dance of communication between Barbara and Leanne. But now there was no dance, no music keeping the rhythm of two minds flowing into sense of we. So joining happens when we attune to the internal shifts in another person as they attune to us, and our two worlds become linked as one through facial expression and tones of voice, gestures and postures, some so fleeting they can be captured only on slowed down recording. We come to resonate with one another. The whole we create together is truly larger than our individual identities. We feel this resonance as a palpable sense of connections and aliveness. This is what happens when our minds meet. A patient of mine once described these vital connections as feeling felt by another person. We sense that our internal world is shared, that our mind is inside the other. But Leanne no longer felt by her mom. The way Barbara behaved with her family reminded me of a classic research tool used to study infant-parent communication and attachment called the still phase experiment. It is painful both to practice both to participate in and to watch. A mother is asked to sit with her 4-month-old infant facing her, and when signaled to stop interacting with her child. This is still ways in which no verbal or non-verbal signals are to be shared with the child is profoundly distressing. For up to 3 minutes, the child attempts to engage the non-responsive parent in a bid for connection. At first, the child usually amps up her signals, increasing smiles, goes eye contact, but after a period of continuing non-response, and she becomes agitated and distressed. Her organized words for connection melting into signs of anguish and outrage. She may then attempt to smooth herself by placing her hand in her जाओ नीचे जाओ ना मैं काम कर रहा मैं लाइव कॉल चालू है मेरा in her mouth or pulling at her clothes. Sometimes researchers or parents call off the experiment at this time, but sometimes it goes on until the infant withdraws, giving up in kind of the despondent collapse that looks like a melancholic depression. And these stages of protest, self-soothing, and despair reveal how much the child depends upon the attuned responses of a parent to keep her own internal world in equilibrium. We come into the world wired to make connections with one another, and the subsequent neural shaping of our brain, the very foundation of our sense of self is built upon these intimate exchanges between the infant and her caregivers. In the early years, this interpersonal regulation is essential for survival, but throughout our lives, we continue to need such connections for a sense of vitality and well-being. Leanne once had an attuned mother, and Barbara's earlier presence in her life was now literally embedded in the structure of Leanne's Mindsight map making brain. But Barbara could no longer map Leanne's mind. She could not feel her children within her, and she could not make them feel free. Her lack of interest in them, her apparent indifference to their feelings and needs, her withdrawal of what they experienced as love, was the outer sign of this inner tragedy. Treating Barbara's family made it clear to me that mind, brain, and relationship are not separate elements of life. They are irreducible aspects of one interconnected triangle of well-being. At 7 years of age, Leanne had responded to her mother's withdrawal by going mute. The triangle was ruptured. I met with Leanne, Amy, Tommy, and Ben many times to give them an opportunity to talk openly to me and one another about how their lives had changed since Barbara's accident. Then one day I brought in Barbara's brain scan and pointed to those areas that had been damaged. I made simplified sketch on whiteboard so that they could visualize the varied connections of the prefrontal cortex, and I let them know that the injury to this key region could explain almost all of the ways in which Barbara had changed. This seemed particularly important because children so often feel guilty when things go bad in family. Here was concrete evidence that their mother's irritability and the lack of warmth toward them were not caused by anything they had done and could not be remedied by their behaving better. I hoped that instead of becoming paralyzed with self recrimination or confusion, they could make sense of the change in their lives and experience directly the pain of their losses. The children listened as attentively as Ben did, and even Tommy seemed to grasp that his mother had broken brain. Leanne had already become much more talkative during our meetings, and now she asked many questions about why her mom's love needed a brain to become alive. I thought love came from the heart, she said. She was right. The networks of nerve cells around the heart and throughout the body communicate directly with the social parts of our brain, and they send that heartfelt sense right up to our middle prefrontal areas. I've told Leanne that unless her mother's brain was working properly, she couldn't pick up the signals that I was sure were still there in her heart. In her heart, that image seemed to soothe Leanne, and as she came back to it later again and again, It gave her a new patience and tolerance of her mother's distant and irritable way of being, and I was touched to see her quiet acts of kindness toward Barbara. Leanne began talking again in school, reconnected with her friends, and found comfort in her teacher who paid extra attention to her after hearing what had happened at home. I met with Ben separately and encouraged him to express his own feeling more openly. This did not come naturally to him, and he had been working hard to keep family life as normal as possible. But of course, their life was normal, and the children needed to see that they were not alone in their grief, that it was okay for them to express their fears and concerns and uncertainties. Ben and I also discussed Tommy's particular needs. He had, in essence, lost his mother at 2 before his own prefrontal region had begun to blossom. Let me check its pronunciation.
Blossom.
Blossom, blossom, blossom. Not yet having developed the circuitry to express his feeling fully, Tom especially would need ongoing help to make sense of his life story. For now, at 3, his sadness, anxiety, and confusion were almost beyond words. Amy continued to struggle with her anger toward her mother. She was furious that Barbara had not worn a seat belt that day, and frustrated that the mother she had once looked up to was now gone. In addition, at the very time when she was starting to move away from her family and find her own identity with friends, she was expected to take care of Leanne and Tommy. I heard her frustration, and I helped Ben acknowledge her need to have time for herself, even while still being expected to pitch in at home. Gradually, she became able to treat her mother with more kindness, although Barbara could not reciprocate. Let me check.
Reciprocate.
Oh man, I need to check US.
Reciprocated.
Reciprocated, and a tree. And let me check it again. The meaning: respond to, reciprocate, and treat Amy in that way. This was their new reality. As time went on, Barbara's motor coordination improved somewhat, but the damage to the front of her brain had been too severe. Severe.
Severe.
Severe. And she showed no signs of regaining her connected way of being. Nonetheless, Leanne and her family continued to strengthen their connection with one another. Mindsight permitted them to make sense of their experience and to allow the grieving process to unfold in a healthy way. The mindsight is what Barbara had lost, and mindsight was what the family needed to mourn
Mourn.
mourn the old Barbara and let the new Barbara into their lives. I learned then that knowing about the different functions of the brain somehow enables people to gain enough distance from a damaged or hurtful relationship that they can develop more compassion and understanding, both for the other person in the relationship that for themselves. As you will see throughout this book, this lesson has guided my work as the therapist ever since. Mindsight depends upon linking together wide arrays of neural input from throughout the entire body, from multiple regions of the brain, and even from the signals we receive from other people. To understand how this linkage takes place, it helps to be able to visualize the brain as a system of interconnected parts. Since the time when I first sketched Barbara's prefrontal region, for Leanne and the rest of her family. I've experienced with a number of models that show the brain in three dimensions. Following is the one I have never forgotten to take with me to lecture. You can use it as you read this book without even getting up from your chair. Of course, it's simplified enough to make some neurologists eager for more details, but it has helped my patients develop the mindset needed to make sense of their experience. Mindset in the sense understanding of the things. Hand model of the brain. If you put your thumb in the middle of your palm and then curl your fingers over the top, you'll have a handy model of the brain. My kids can't stand that poon either. The face of the other person is in front of the knuckles and sorry, the back of the head toward the back of your hand. Your wrist represents the spinal cord rising from your bone upon which the brain sits. If you lift up your fingers and raise your thumb, you'll see the inner brainstem represented in your palm. Place your thumb back down and you'll see the approximate location of the limbic area. Ideally, we would have two thumbs, left and right, to make this symmetric model. Now, curl your fingers back over the top and your cortex is in place. These three regions, the limbic area, and the cortex comprise what has been called the trine brain, which developed in layers over the course of evolution. At the very minimum, integrating the brain involves linking the activity of these three regions, since they are distributed bottom to top, from inward and lower brainstem region to the limbic area to the outer and the higher cortex. We could call this vertical integration. The brain is also divided into two halves, left and right. So neural integration must also involve linking the functions of the two sides of the brain. This could be called horizontal or bilateral integration. I'll discuss bilaterality
Bilaterality.
bilaterality laterality. Knowing about the function of the major region of the brain can help you to focus your attention in a ways that will create the desired linkage among them. And so allow me to give you a brief overview of the layers of the triune brain.
Triune.
Triune.
Triune. Triune.
Triune. Triune brain. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the brainstem formed what some call the reptilian brain. Reptilian brain. The brainstem receives input from the body and sends input back down again to regulate basic processes such as the functioning of our heart and lungs. Beyond controlling the energy level of the body through regulating heart rate and respiration, the brainstem also shapes the energy level of the brain areas above it. The limbic and cortical regions, the brainstem directly controls our states of arousal, determining, for example, if we are hungry or let me check it.
Satiated.
Satiated, hungry or satiated means another term for sate. Fully satisfied. Okay, satiated. Hungry or satiated, driven by sexual desire or relaxed with sexual satisfaction, awake or asleep. A diagram of a human brain looking from the middle to the right side. Some of the major areas of the brain are indicated, including the brainstem, The limbic areas with the amygdala and hippocampus, and the cerebral cortex with the middle prefrontal region. Not seen is the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. Clusters of neurons in the brainstem also come into play when certain conditions seem to require a rapid mobilization of energy distribution throughout the body and brain. And this so-called fight, flight, freeze array of responses is responsible for our survival at time of danger, working in concert with the evaluating processes of both the limbic and the higher cortical region. The brainstem is the arbiter of whether we respond to threats either by mobilizing our energy for combat or for flight, or by freezing in helplessness, collapsing in the face of an overwhelming situation. But whichever of these responses is chosen, when we are in survival mode, our reactivity makes it quite challenging, if not overright impossible, but to be open and receptive to others. So part of the process of developing mindsight involves reducing reactivity when it's not actually necessary, as you will see later. The brainstem is also fundamental part of what are called motivational systems that help us satisfy our basic needs for food, shelter, reproductions, and safety. When you feel a deep drive to behave in a certain way, chances are that your brainstem is working closely with the next higher region, the limbic area, to push you to act. The limbic area lies deep within the brain, approximately where your thumb is on the hand model. It evolved when small mammals first appeared around 200 million years ago. This old mammalian brain works closely with the brainstem and the body proper to create not only our basic drives but also our emotions. These feeling states are filled with a sense of meaning because in the limbic region evaluate our current situation. Is this good or is this bad? Is the most basic question the limbic area addresses. We move toward the good and withdraw from the bad. In this way, the limbic region help create the emotions that evoke motion, that motivate us to act in response to the meaning we assign to whatever is happening to us in that moment. The limbic area is also crucial for how we form relationship and become emotionally attached to one another. If you have ever raised fish or frogs or lizards, you know that these non-mammalian creatures lack attachment to you and know one another and to one another. Rats, cats, dogs, on other hand, are equipped with mammalian limbic region. Attachment is just what they and we do. We are hardwired to connect with one another thanks to our mammalian heritage. The limbic areas plays an important regulatory role through the hypothalamus, a master endocrine control center, via the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus sends and receives hormones throughout the body, spatially influencing our sexual organs and the thyroid and adrenal glands. For example, when we are stressed, we secrete a hormone that stimulates the adrenals to release cortisol, which mobilizes energy by putting our entire metabolism on a high alert to meet the challenge. Now, this response is highly adaptive in the face of short-term stress, but it can turn into a problem in the long term if we face an overwhelming situation in which we cannot adequately cope. Cortisol levels may become chronically elevated. Dramatic experiences, in particular, can sensitize limbic reactivity so that even minor stresses can cause cortisol to spike, making daily life more challenging for the traumatized person. These high cortisol levels can also be toxic to the growing brain and interfere with proper growth and functions of neural tissue. Finding a way to soothe excessively excessively reactive. Limbic firing is crucial to rebalancing emotions and diminishing the harmful effect of chronic stress. As we'll see, Mindsight can help us recruit the higher areas of the brain to create cortical override of these limbic reactivities. The limbic area also helps us create several different forms of memory, of facts, of specific experience, of the emotions that gave color and textures to those experiences located to either side of the central hypothalamus and a pituitary to specific clusters of neurons have been intensively studied in this regard. The amygdala and the hippocampus. The almond-shaped amygdala has been found to be spatially important in the fear response. Although some writers attribute all emotions to the amygdala, more recent research suggests that our general feelings actually originate from more broadly distributed areas of the limbic zone, the brainstem, and the body proper, and are woven into our cortical functioning as well. The amygdala can prompt an instantaneous survival response. Once, when my son and I were hiking in the High Sierra, let me check its pronunciation.
Sierra.
Sierra. High Sierra. A sudden jolt of fear brought me to a halt, and I yelled out to him, "Stop!" Only after I yelled did I realize why my constantly on guard amygdala had seized upon a visual perception beneath my conscious awareness of a coiled object in our path. Luckily, my son did stop. He wasn't at a resistant teenager and was then able to step around the poised for action young rattlesnake who was sharing the trail with us. Here we see that emotional states can be created without consciousness and we may act on them without awareness. This may save our lives or it can cause us to do things we later regret deeply. In order for us to become aware of the feelings inside us, to consciously attend to and understand them, we need to link these subcortically created emotional states to our cortex. Finally, we come to we come to the we come to the hippocampus, a seahorse shaped cluster of neurons that functions as a master puzzle piece assembler, linking together widely separated areas of the brain, from our perceptual region to our repository for facts to our language centers. This integration of neural firing patterns converts our moment to moment experiences into memories. I can relate the snake story to you because my hippocampus linked together the various aspects of that experience, sensation in my body, emotions, thoughts, facts, reflections, into a lived in time set to recollection. The hippocampus develops gradually during our early years and continues to grow new connections and even new neurons throughout our lives. As we mature, the hippocampus views the basic forms of emotional and perpetual memory into factual and autobiographical recollection, laying the foundation for my ability to tell you about that long ago snake encounter in the Sierras. Sierras, however, this uniquely human storytelling ability also depends upon the development of highest part of the brain, the cortex. The outer layer or the bark of the brain is the cortex. It is sometimes called the new mammalian brain or neocortex because it's expanded greatly with the appearance of primates and most especially with the emergence of human being. The cortex creates more intricate firing patterns that represents the three-dimensional world beyond the bodily functions and survival reactions mediated by the lower subcortical regions. In humans, the more elaborate frontal portion of the cortex allows us to have ideas, that concepts, and to develop the mindsight maps that give us insight into the inner world. The frontal cortex actually makes neural firing patterns that represents its own representation. In other words, it allows us to think about thinking. The good news is that this gives us human new capacities to think, to imagine, to recombine facts and experiences to create. The burden is that at times these new capacities allow us to think too much. As far as we know, no other species represent its own neural representations. Probably one reason why we sometimes recall ourselves neurotic. The cortex is folded into involved into convoluted hills. Let me check its pronunciation.
Convoluted.
Convoluted hills and valleys, which brain scientists have divided into regions they call lobes. On your hand model, the back or posterior cortex extends from your second knuckle, counting from the fingertips to the back of your hand, and include the occipital, parietal, and temporal lobes. The posterior cortex is the master map maker of our physical experience, generating our perceptions of the outer world through the five senses, and also keeping track of the location and movement of our physical body through touch and motion perception. If you have learned to use a tool, whether it was a hammer, a basketball bat, or even a car, you may remember the magical moment when your initial awkwardness dropped away, and the amazingly adaptive perceptual function of the back of the cortex have embedded that object into your body map, so that it is neurally experienced like an extension of your body. This is how we can drive rapidly on a freeway or park a car in a tight space, use a scalpel with precision, or attempt a 300 batting average. Looking again at your hand model, the front of the cortex or frontal lobe extends from your fingertips to the second knuckle. This region evolved during our primate history and is most developed in our human species. As we move from the back toward the front, we first encounter motor strip that controls our voluntary muscles. Distinct groups of neurons control our legs, arms, hands, fingers, and facial muscles. These neural groups extend to the spinal cord where they cross over, so that we make our right side muscle work by activating our left motor area. The same crossover is true for our sense of touch, which is represented farther back in the brain, in a zone of the parietal lobe called the somatosensory strips. Coming back to the frontal areas and moving a bit more forward, we find a region called the premotor strip, which allow us to plan our motor action. You can see that this part of the lobe is still deeply connected to physical world, enabling us to interact with our external environment. The prefrontal cortex. As we move higher and more forward in the brain, we finally come to the area from your first knuckles to your fingertips on the hand model. Here, just behind the forehead, is the prefrontal cortex, which has evolved to this extent only in human being. We have now moved beyond the neural concerns for the physical world and the movement of the body, and into another realm of neurally constructed reality, beyond the bodily and survival concerns of the brainstem, beyond the evaluative and emotional limbic functions, beyond even perceptual processes of the posterior cortex, and the motor functions of the posterior portions of the frontal lobe. We come we come upon the more abstract and symbolic forms of information flow that seem to set us apart as a species. In this prefrontal realm, we create representation of concepts such as time, a sense of self, and moral judgments. It is here also that we create our mindsight maps. Look again at your hand model. The outer two fingertips represents the side prefrontal cortex, which participates in generating the conscious focus of attentions. When you put something in the front of your mind, you are linking activity in this region to activity from other areas of the brain, such as the ongoing visual perceptions from the occipital lobe. Even when we generate an image from memory, we activate a similar portion of the occipital lobe. When my amygdala pursued rattlesnake without my conscious awareness. That perceptual shortcut likely took place without my side prefrontal involvement. Only later, after I yelled for my son to stop and felt my heart pounding, did my side prefrontal region get involved and permit me to figure out consciously that I had been afraid of snake. Now focus on the middle two fingernail areas. We have arrived at the middle prefrontal areas that was so severely damaged in Barbara's accident. As I described earlier in this chapter, this area has important regulatory functions that range from shaping bodily processes through overseeing brainstem activity to enabling us to pause before we act, have insight and empathy, and enact moral judgments. Now, what makes this middle prefrontal region so crucial to carrying out these essential functions of a healthy life? If you lift your fingers up and put them back down, you will get a sense of the anatomical uniqueness of this region. It connects everything. Notice how your two middle fingertips rest on top of the limbic thumbs and touch the brainstem palm and are also linked directly to the cortex fingers. So the middle prefrontal areas is literally one synapse away from neurons in the cortex, in the limbic areas, and the brainstem. And as I'll discuss later, it even has functional pathways that connects us to the social world of the other brains. The two halves of the brain. Now, this figure reveals the location of the areas of the middle prefrontal cortex, which includes the medial and ventral region of the prefrontal cortex, the orbitofrontal cortex, and the anterior cingulate cortex on both sides of the brain. The corpus callosum connects the two halves. The middle prefrontal region create links among the following widely separated and differentiated neural regions: the cortex, limbic areas, and brainstem within the skull, and the internally distributed nervous system of the body proper. It also links signals from all those areas to the signals we send and receives in our social world. As the prefrontal cortex helps coordinate and balance the firing patterns from these many regions, it is profoundly integrative. In the following chapters, we'll explore what happens when these integrative areas goes offline. Lift up your fingers and you'll have an image of how we flip our lids and head down and low road in our interaction with others. That's I completed my chapter first, and I am going to end this live stream. But before that, let me breathe. This is happening to me like I was getting throat dried up. I was focusing on my time, like when 12 o'clock is going to be, and when I'm going to like end. There were some time I was thinking about like some other things that I'm gonna take these and these while reading. Like there were lots of thoughts was going into my mind, but this is like normal. Just whenever you are also going to read, like this might be you are going to feel the same way I'm feeling. So it is just normal, everybody's having. But eventually if you read, if you practice again and again, after a certain period of time, it will be like very good. And besides that, I have to like say lots of things, but right now I'm not gonna say that because I don't remember exactly what I was thinking. Whenever I like remember, I will take a note down of that so that I can make video on that. Like I was also thinking that I am right now just recording and uploading. Sometime I'm still doing live streaming, and sometime I'm just recording and uploading. But just to show you that it is not only that I'm going to do. I'll edit videos, I'll upload, but I want to show all those process, how I'm doing all those things, like taking notes, thinking about thumbnails, thinking about YouTube, thinking about all the processes, all those things. Somehow I'm going to show you. So yeah, like in next video, like not live stream, but today I'm going to upload one more video, which could be like 10 minutes. In that video I'll be explaining the things related to this live streaming, like what I was experiencing, what I was thinking, and all those things. Because when I see my video, when I will review my video, I'll get some feedback by myself. I will note it down all those, and will try to make a video, a good video on those, on that, with proper, like earlier I just recorded with one my hand, but I'll try to record it today, like having in front of me a camera, like camera. Right now I'm having camera, but I will try to capture it that way, so that I can like give you more value, whoever is watching, so that you don't have to be like see very vague thing, like which is not not very much of value. But I'll try to make it the way as I'm growing in my brain, actually, not outer side. But like like whenever you are going to do things for that particular thing, in your brain there will be neuron that is going to be fired. So it is just building up that neurons. If you are doing again and again some things, there are some of the things that in my body posture and all those things, I'll try to make all of those like improving. Not like it is I'm just doing this just for me myself, and just by showing this you'll also get some values. Hope you'll also get some values. That's all my thing here. So thank you very much for watching these live streaming. But no one is watching right now, but might be if you're seeing it, then yeah, that's all for today's live streaming. Thank you very much, and I'm going to end this live stream. Let's see you tomorrow in the live streaming of third day of challenge of same book. I'll be reading continually since from this chapter itself, like Crips of Wrath, Mindset, Lost, and